question: what is the count for peer-reviewed soft tissue finds in dinosaur bones? Last I checked, it was over 240.
Well, you're spot on. It's increasing all the time. Joe is our expert on that because he's involved in that sort of research himself for his doctorate. And secondly, it's not just dinosaur bone anymore. We are now into skin samples that have been preserved. So there's all sorts of fossils now that they've conceded, hey, there's DNA in here. Let's go looking elsewhere in the blood, in the skin stuff. Everywhere they're looking now. So I will predict it will skyrocket in terms of numbers. You are at the lower end at the moment, and it will unbelievably increase as people realise they can find out an awful lot. And here's John Mackay's prediction: when they can unravel the genes and the genetic information in the DNA they're detecting, they will find it cries out after their own kind, because the Creator Christ has stamped his nature even on the creation. So the triune Godhead means the alphabet of DNA has got 3 letters at a time, and it's amazing the sort of stuff that you can find even just in the DNA. But they're not at that level yet, but I predict they will get there, because the bones and skin are not millions of years old after all. They were buried quickly, which is why it's preserved. They were buried in the absence of oxygen, so there's nothing there to actually disintegrate the DNA except the genetic entropy, which will pull it apart anyway. But there's my prediction. Copy it down and come back and tell us when they prove we're right. Anybody else got any comments on that one?
Well, John, sorry. I was going to say, just a couple of months ago, I sent something to Joe where one of our other colleagues had a list of 140. So it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of months later it's 240. I think it's going to be exponential increase.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, John, you were well ahead of them, really, when years ago you extracted usable ink out of a fossil squid.
Yes, and we weren't the first. We copied an experiment done in the 1800s where they done that, and it's been totally ignored. And sadly, ours was totally ignored too, but that's what we've done.
Yeah. Well, it's just piling on just how fallacious the whole sort of evolutionary sort of mindset is. And just to see, just even in just sort of some simple, just digging up a bone that's supposed to be millions of years old, something that shouldn't be there is there, and yet they're trying to explain it with, oh, well, it could be iron, or it could be no. Let's just face facts here. It shouldn't be there, and you can't explain that away with no matter what you.
You're exactly right, Sam. That people say, oh, science will change when new evidence comes up. Well, no, that's not what happens. They've found this evidence, and do they go, oh, well, that must mean dinosaurs died out, much more recently than we thought? No, they have to continue with that line of thinking and say, well, now we've got to figure out how these organic materials can last many millions of years. It shows you.
Yeah, I know. When I was I think I was reading something from in a book or something like that from a while ago, and they were talking about one of the things that'd be really great for proving the Earth is sort of 6,000 years old if we found sort of biological material in dinosaur bones, which was written before Mary Schweitzer found the soft tissue in the T-Rex femur, and it just sort of goes to show as well that it is such a massive scientific breakthrough, the fact that we've actually found soft, pliable biological material within bones that are supposedly millions of years old, and this should be evidence saying these bones aren't as old as you think they are. And yet they're going, well, no, hang on. No, they must be millions of years old because we know they evolved. We just got to figure out how it survived for all that time. And it's the scientists now are saying, if we say to an atheist, oh, what would prove that evolution wouldn't be true? And they say, oh, well, if we found a mammoth in the Precambrian or what have you. And then if we actually find one, they'll be like, oh, well, no, mammoths must have been around at that time. it's constantly backpedaling and it's just madness. It's infuriating, but just the
Sam, I've got a really good example of Diane's snake evolution in my backyard, because quite a few years ago, a ridgeback snake, or a rough-scaled snake, which is mildly toxic, was in my backyard, because we live out in the bush, right, just on the edge of the bush. And anyway, I saw it sneaking through the grass, and it was intently looking in front of itself, and there in front was a toadlet really, and it was facing the other way. So the snake was quietly slithering up behind it. And I thought to myself, don't you go there, snake. You will regret that. Now, we don't have any ridgeback snakes in our backyard. They all went there. They've all been eliminated by the fact that we've had a few wet seasons, lots of toadlets, and the decrease in the number of snakes is very visible. The interesting thing, I saw another example of toads, which are not a native to Australia, by the way. We borrowed them from the Americas. We brought them out here to eliminate the cane beetle. Out here, they discovered they liked anything else but the cane beetle. So we still have the cane beetle problem. So natural selection made it easier for the toads to live by eating everything else. But the one thing that has tried to eat them, as Diane said, are snakes. But there are more snakes than just the ridgebacks, which have died out in my backyard. What we've got is, I came across 2 dead creatures tied together in a tangle of a fight the other day, photographed it immensely. It's all in my files now. And here is this python, not a huge python, but it's obviously been hungry. It wrapped around a toad, and it was just about to eat the toad, and you could see its mouth starting to open up, and then they both died, because the toad had had the whole of its whole bone system broken as the snake constricted. But in constricting the toad, you could see it had crossed over its poison glands, and the snake had absorbed poison not through its mouth, but through its skin. And by the time the snake got ready to actually open up, that was it. And it was still there with its mouth part open, toad dead, snake dead. And I thought, natural selection doesn't help anything much here. If they'd have stayed vegetarian like they were in the beginning, none of this would have happened. If we'd never have eaten poison toads, it wouldn't have mattered what they had in their salivary glands. It's not the snake not the toad that's poisonous. It's the fact that we eat things that we were not designed to eat in the first place. So you've got to put all that into the picture. Next question.
Well, John, you kind of had me lost a little bit when you mentioned that this snake was mildly toxic. I'm just thinking, is that by Australian standards? Because that's probably severely toxic by our standards.
Well, yes, I guess that's probably true. But in reality, if it bit your dog or cat, they would die. If it bit you, you'd take longer to die.
That's what I figured.
Fair enough.